the richest man in the Bible, Solomon, gives you advice that will make you rich as well. That advice comes out of Proverbs chapter 3, verse 9. Listen to this. Honor the Lord with your wealth, with the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim over with new wine. What does he say? Put God first in your finances. You know, that is the key to seeing the blessings of God come on your life. Because the moment God sees that you put him first, blessings are going to come. And this is what Solomon says. Blessings are going to flow to you. So what does he mean by first fruits? Well, first fruits was a term that describes what part of the tithe we give to God. In other words, first fruits and tithe can be interchangeable terms. Now, what a tithe is tells you how much you give, which is 10%. That's what the word tithe means. But first fruits tells you which 10% to give. You know, somebody will say to me, Bishop, I wish I can tithe to my church, but I don't have money for that. Well, how do you know you don't have any money to tithe? Well, after I pay my mortgage, my school bills, after I buy my food, pay the car bills, after I do all of my bills, I don't have any left over. That already tells me your tithe is not the first fruits. It's the last fruits. In other words, you pay everything else first, and then if there's anything left over, you give to God. And you hope, cross your fingers, that you have enough to give a tithe. Well, that's not what a tithe is. A tithe is a first fruits. That means before you pay the mortgage, before you pay the car payments, before you pay your school loans, before you buy your food, you know what you're going to first do? You're going to give to God the first tenth of your income. And that is what tithing is. It's giving to God first, not second, not third, and definitely not last. You ever think of the story of Jericho? Jericho was the one city that Israel devoted all of their wealth. In other words, they did not take any of the animals for themselves. They destroyed it all. Have you ever wondered why they destroyed Jericho but not other cities? It's real simple. Jericho was the first town that they took. It's the first one. And because it's the first one, they chose not to take any of the wealth for themselves, but to devote it completely to God, because it was the first fruits. They didn't wait to defeat 9 nations, and then on the 10th one, they said, okay, now God, we're going to devote it to you. No. They devoted the first nation because they believed God would give them victory on the second, third, and fourth. You see, when you tithe, you give to God the first 10% of your income, because what you're telling God is, I believe there's going to be enough for the second, the third, the fourth. In other words, there'll be enough for the mortgage, the car payments, and the food, and everything else. So I'm giving to you first. You know, the first recorded example of giving to God in the Bible is the story of Cain and Abel. Have you ever wondered why God accepted Abel's offering but rejected Cain? It had nothing to do with the fact that one was a blood offering. That's what I hear all the time. Well, you know, Abel offered a blood sacrifice and God wanted blood. That's not really the reason. In Genesis chapter 4, it tells you the reason. It says in verse 2b, now Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. In the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. Notice some. And Abel also brought as an offering fat portions from some of the firstborn of the flock. Notice firstborn. That's the key. You see, Abel put God first. Cain did not. And here's my question. Are you an Abel or are you a Cain? Are you the one who tries to tithe if you have enough, but it doesn't come first to God? This is why Solomon is saying it's not enough to tithe. It has to be the first fruits. God has to be first in your life. And when he's first, then you know what's going to happen? Blessings are going to abound in your life. So make no mistake about it. God wants you to tithe, and he wants you to tithe first because he wants you to be blessed.